Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hearth. Today, Kate, Allison, Kristin, and I are going to be having a conversation about choices along our healing path. And for me, that also, the way that I would also say that is there's the principle of choice, but there's also the healthy impulse. How do I experience healthy impulse? And for myself, one of the things that we were talking about is that when I look back, way back into my healing process, even before I was consciously in a healing process, I could see all the healthy impulses that were arising in me, but there wasn't a witness that was holding and witnessing that process. They were arising, I was living them. And then eventually I found myself into um, healing centers, teachers that were able to reflect back to me what was happening, what I was experiencing, and also how to enhance that, how to do it more intentionally. And so I feel so much gratitude to all the different systems that I entered that were, in a sense, this is how humans learn. We learn when our impulses that arise from us are accurately reflected. That's how babies learn, and that's how we even relearn things as adults. So that's what our conversation will be about, is about those healthy impulses that arise. How do we begin to create context around those healthy impulses so we can actually see that we're having lots of healthy impulses, lots of healthy choices, and then how to intentionally help that grow and help that really, create shifts in our lives and integrate difficult experiences from the past and change our habits and patterns that were based on old beliefs. So I'll let one of the three of you take it from here and say more.
Go ahead, Kristen. It was so alive in you earlier. Go.
It's interesting because I'm taking in what Eileen was sharing, and it feels like it's slightly different than what was alive for me earlier. But what is here now as you speak, Eileen, is just really thinking about the health that's actually in our systems from the very beginning and how that's constantly trying to express itself in different ways. And I loved what you spoke about in terms of seeing those healthy impulses that you had from the very beginning. And I think in the little ones that we work with and families, we see that there, whether it's the healthy impulse to express the story that had happened and with the desire, the need for someone to see it and reflect it back, or that they're trying to show us how something that they would like to have happen instead. And so I know for myself, just with a lot of my history, not knowing some of this, of course, I didn't couldn't recognize it. But then as I have been healing, I've been able to look back similar to you, I'm guessing, Eileen, and seeing like, oh wow, some of those impulses, some of those choices that I made of who I reached out to or where I ended up going came from this place that I didn't know exactly where, but something just kept leading me to one place after another, and an exploration or a curiosity. And I think that's alive in all of us. And I think that's what often brings people to be curious about either the PPN work or the desire to heal or what is that? Can we recognize that there is some considerable health there that is wanting to be seen or met or be digested? So I see that sparks something maybe for you, Alison. So I'll pause there.
Yeah, I'm sitting with like, how did I really turn my healing journey into an actual healing journey? And I remember the turning point of my sister confronting me. And I'm really grateful that she did. Where one day, I guess she was tired of hearing me complain because I was going through a life-threatening illness at the time and just feeling I was stuck in a victim place around it. And she got on the phone and said, listen, Alison, how do people in a wheelchair continue? How do people who lose a limb continue? It's like, what if you were to see this illness that you have, not trying to get back to where you were and who you were? What if this is a step forward? And she did it so strong because I'm sure she was completely annoyed and irritated at me complaining. And it was like it woke me up. It was like a slap on the face, And I remember that being a turning point of really being curious. Well, what if I were to accept? And that's the word I'm coming to. What if I were to accept my reality? How do I choose life from this place now? What are life enhancing choices and how do they affect me? How do they shift me? And it was a huge turning point for me of not trying to change it, but to be with it and to feel the energy come inside of, I don't know, I felt like encrusted negativity. And as I started exploring it, I started to see how that negativity also felt like a place of, an imprint from my family lineage of this is intelligence, to always prepare for the worst. And then by doing that, I was circling around, trapped in preparing for the worst, rather than kind of getting off the off ramp and just sitting into the curiosity of, well, what is reality if I'm not preparing for the worst? And I remember going through so many layers in myself of feeling vulnerable, feeling afraid, feeling like I was not going to belong to my family anymore if I didn't always come from a negative perspective. It was an interesting journey to make a commitment to choose life-enhancing experiences and to accept where I am in the moment, rather than circling around in the past. So that was a huge turning point of the tough love experience of my sister.
Yeah, but you had to keep choosing.
Yes.
You had to keep choosing. So I wonder what was that impulse on the inside? What did you call it, Eileen? The healthy impulse?
I don't know,
Original.
when I'm listening to you, Allison, I'm feeling like, and this is what I feel like happened to me and what I work with my clients. How do I help wake up that spark inside the person? And what I hear is your sister said something and you're really grateful. She provided outer reflection, but a spark woke up in you.
Mhm.
A healthy impulse. Oh.
Yeah, it was, I remember the feeling of it because I was sitting in it, exploring it very deeply daily. I would meditate and open to it and just question it, explore it. Does life feel like if I'm positive? Because I came from a family that really was quite negative. And so I remember seeing like the negativity. It was as if it would distract me away from myself. It was almost like an addiction. where it pulled me away from myself. So it's operating over here, but then where am I? So I kept having to bring myself back to the present moment. Like, okay, and it was hard work not to choose to go off into this place of belonging to my lineage, belonging to my family, preparing for the worst, and bring myself back and just be open. Who am I now? What is this like now? And one felt very controlled and closed, and the other felt softer and open. And I remember just really getting the sensation of it, and that feeling of being distracted into something else was so strong that stayed with me. So when I had that feeling of going away and being distracted, then I knew my choice was to come back and be with whatever it was. And often it was facing some kind of pain or disillusion or, negative belief. I mean, it was the adventurous journey, as someone said earlier. I think it was you, Kate. The
Yeah.
adventurous journey of your healing. It was very adventurous.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
loved
well,
what you, oh, I'm sorry.
it's okay.
Can I just add just one little
Mhm.
piece? I loved what you said, Eileen, about the reflection, because as I sat with your reflection of Allison, I was sitting with the two pieces of it. There's a reflection your sister gave of the family system, but also a reflection of another possibility, like what happened, what other people do or could do if we looked at it from a more like a step forward versus something that's holding us back. And so I could really feel both of those pieces in what your sister offered you, and how that, Anna Chitty would use the term like broaden, how with trauma and stress, our focus gets narrowed. And that might be the only way we see something. But with another perspective, it all of a sudden opened up another possibility. So I thought that was kind of cool. Sorry, Kate.
No, it's okay. I couldn't remember now what I was going to say.
Oh, no.
But I can add to the conversation. I mean, we all had the origin of when we started down the path, I suppose. For me, it was also illness. It was, I don't know, it's mysterious illness that took me over when I was living in Africa. I mean, 40 years ago. But, the response is like, I want to get better. I mean, what is that? I mean, that's one of the things we were talking about. It's like, I wanted to, uh, not only did I want to get better, but I wanted to make sense of it. And when we were talking earlier about, this reflections and support, it's like there's a way that I follow my leadings. I had to learn how to do that, but this is a Quaker way of life. And that there's a way that in my faith, there's a way that I get clearness if I need help. People who can come around and ask questions. They don't tell me what to do, but it feels like that outer surround was like the place that would give that support. But what was that spark? Like I just wanted to get better and tried a lot of things and went exploring. When you start exploring health, I remember thinking, just exploring my interior, all the things that were up for me that had been broken open by getting sick. And um, I feel like there was like this relentless desire to get better. And once you start feeling the difference, that was equally compelling. Um, so that's what happened for me. And so the choice, I don't know if I had that much awareness, I didn't know if it was really a choice. To me, it didn't feel like a choice. Uh, and I was young, so there was not a lot of awareness at all. I mean, it was kind of a hot mess, really. And the illness kind of got me, quickly into like healing arts and exploring what it meant to be on that healing path. And I tried so many things, um, very far out things, and then eventually found my way into the pre-perinatal work, which has been just so illuminating and always interesting, and always one more step to find out more about who I really am as a human in having a spiritual life in the physical body. Uh, so I felt, yeah, is it a choice? Sometimes we're pushed, right? Pushed into the health, pushed into finding our own healthy impulses. And it sounds less like that for you, Allison. You made discernment, really. That was your pathway as a discernment to, no, I'm choosing this now, which that sounds really like hard work. Like, but so is perhaps the push that I had. That was, here, I'm just going to make you really sick, and then how are you going to get out of that? And I did.
And in the practice that I do at the Brema Center, um, we have practices that where we're bringing basically like the I'll just use a language that's more PPN language, but it's basically to bring a witness to just observe our unconscious behaviors with acceptance, and also notice moments where we have a more an experience of increased consciousness, and to be able to see that and name that with acceptance. And what is also said at the Brema Center in this practice is if you don't have some kind of inner organization to do that, then some event of life, some other force from the outside, seemingly, will force us into that growth. And for myself, my two most foundational containers where I've done my growth is at the Brema Center and in the PPN work. And when I started at the Brema Center, I've had chronic pain since 20 years old. And I was in my late 20s, and I had this episode where I could barely move. I was in so much pain. And somebody said, go see this Brema practitioner. And I started to go, and then I started to go to class. And then I noticed that if I didn't go to class, I would be in excruciating pain. But if I kept going, I would go 3, 4 times a week. My body would be fine. And I always say this container of growth, this container where I gain self-understanding, my body made me do it. And at the Brema Center, they talk about the body being the wisest part of us, that the mind and the feelings are always in the past or present, but the body in the present moment always has intelligence. So even my impulse to go to the Brema Center originally came from that pain. And eventually, as I started to develop a witness for myself, then I could have that movement more from the inside. So then when I met Kristin, I was in a workshop for craniosacral therapy for babies. And Kristin and I decided to go out to lunch with each other. And she started to describe the work she does. In that moment, it was like 10 minutes into the conversation, something in me knew this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. So where that impulse originally had to come from that outer, seemingly outer condition, Eventually, as I developed that witness that could perceive the impulses, that could trust the impulses, by the time, Kristin, you and I met, there was just a knowing. And then the same thing when I went to my first womb surround with Myrna Martin, then the same thing, I just knew, okay, I'm signing up for the training right now. So there was in the beginning, I had to almost have a brick wall fall on me for me to follow the health. But then eventually, as I gained more of an inner structure to be able to follow those impulses and trust them, then they can simply just be impulses without so much pain. And you know, now I'm almost a 60-year-old woman and my body is so much healthier because I don't need to have, like I used to say, it's like God has me on a short leash, the way like a really unruly dog has to be on a very short leash. And now I feel like I have more of a leash and more capacity to follow those impulses in a more easeful way.
Well, what I hear in both you and Allison is this knowing. Somehow there's this place between choice and impulse. It's like knowing. So that would be where I would deepen. Deepening. How do you describe to someone who's caught up in maybe the swirl of their trauma vortex or constantly in a pattern that reappears and reappears, and how would you describe sort of this knowing and how what are the links between knowing and choice and impulse?
I can really feel it in my body when you say it, Kate. Please go on, but I really felt that as you named that.
I think that's a very good observation because I remember thinking over and over again during that kind of dark time in my life that somehow I knew I was going to get better. I could see it. I didn't know how long it was going to take. Every doctor I went to was basically a depressing experience, but something inside of me knew I was going to have a full life and get better. And so, and it was that knowing. And I remember back then thinking about that, like, how do I know this when it looks so, depressing, or it looks like there's no way out? How do I know that eventually someday I will get past this? So I like that you said that.
I'm just really appreciating this conversation. There's something, I'm listening to all of you, and, Eileen, you said this brick wall like came down on you. And so I was trying to sit and think back of like, what was it? And, I didn't have an illness. I didn't have something that was like drove me in that way. But I did have all my experiences of coming into like new communities from the adoption and then the transfer of schools and things that way. I could feel my personality shifting and me drawing more inwards. And there was something about, of course, public school, high school experience for me was not the most pleasant. And as I was in it, there was something, the word that I would use is I recognize that something's different. There's something's different for me and how I am, but also different between me and other kids at the school that got me curious. And for me, I don't know if I would say it was annoying, but there was we were speaking about reflection a little bit. There was something that was being reflected back to me that stirred a curiosity And that was where I took my first psychology course, because it's just like, why are we so different? I don't understand that so many of these things are really hard for me, but seem to be easy for others. And then there are other things that are really easy for me and hard for others. And so there's something about recognition, curiosity, and at the time it was also timing of, there was this class that just came up, and I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I feel like I need to know it, or learn more about it. And that was part of the knowing for myself too, was there would be something that would show up, and then there was this impulse, and I don't know why I'm doing this, but this is where I need to go. And that happened for me with pre and perinatal psychology too. Looking at programs, I didn't know what I was about to get into, but I knew as soon as I just heard the title of it, it's like, I don't know. I think I need to be there. I need to, whether it's for personal growth or professional, I had no idea. But it was something just said, okay, go. And it was the same thing once I got there. It's like, I have no idea what I'm doing here or if I'm going to stay, but I felt like I was in the right place.
Yeah, that's that knowing again.
Mm-hmm.
Mysterious knowing. But I also, what I like about what you said, Kristin, is recognition. I think it's a little different than knowing, but
Mm-hmm.
oh, I recognize this. Like, what is this? That zone. What is this? What is this? And just having courage and curiosity to follow, that's another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Well, no,
Yeah, that is a really important. I'm glad you mentioned that courage for curiosity, the courage to follow curiosity. There is something about that. There is actually an active choice that has to be made. Um, some of it is the impulse, but then also the active choice to follow it into the unknown.
well, I would say it's the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same, or the pain of staying the same is less than the
Is
pain of
more.
change. It's more, yeah, more than the pain of change.
Yeah.
One of my clients told me that. I asked her why she'd come because it was a pretty big story. And she said, it's because I can't stay like this anymore. And so I want change. But it was the pain of change was less than the pain of staying in how she was. Yeah. Hmm.
And I have a teacher who also said, well, when asked, do children need meditation or do they need Brima? And he said, no, they need parents who are doing that, because when you have parents who are striving toward a more conscious life, a more intentional life, then that deposits something into the child. We could say from the PPN perspective, it imprints it into the child, which then when they come of a certain age, it begins their seeking. But we can't we can't just give our work and our consciousness to our children, but we can imprint that seed, that curiosity to follow their own path when they come of age to where that arises.
Well, that speaks to inviting it into the field, that it can be felt.
Yeah.
Whether it's actually spoken or directed, but whether it's in the immediate family or, we often talk about the generations, both forward and past.
Does
You
that
know,
feel like
I have one more thing to add that just when I think of change, like what was that for me? And for me, it was really about choosing life. Like my experience of life is that life is in constant change. And I had to look at where am I choosing life and where am I choosing death? And I really hung out there a lot, because I was very ill. Like, what would change if I chose life? And it was interesting. It was almost an experience of letting go into life, which actually felt like death. And then resisting life, like I had it inverted inside of me. Resisting life was actually death, but that felt like life. So to resist change felt like life to me, and to let go into change felt like death. And so I had to look at that reversal and
Hmm.
realize, okay, what does it mean to choose life and to be in that flow, like to be in the constantly moving down the river and allowing that flow rather than resisting it. Um, yeah, so change for me is choosing life.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you speak to what Eileen and Kate both said as well, that courage to follow our curiosity into the unknown.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to stay with what's familiar, and it's actually takes a lot more to move into something that we're not familiar with, and the possibility that there's something else.
I think we can stop here.
Mhm.
That's great. Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you, everyone. That was so alive.
Yeah, that's great.